Lenny,
Hi,
how you
Maeve.
doing?
Good morning to you.
Ready to go see some Terry O'Neill sites?
Yes, please.
Let's do it. Lenny, when did you first pick Terry up?
I picked him up in the middle 80s, a few years after I became a cab driver at Kensington. He was a working class man like myself, and that's when we engaged in conversation, and he told me about this fascinating story of the Mayfair Orphans. The way he explained it, that they all get together on, I think it was the first Thursday of every month, and then one would pick up the bill for the rest of the crowd, and then the following month someone else would pick a similar venue in Mayfair and do the same thing. You know, he went through all their names, the Michael Caine's, Roger Moore, Mickey Most, Johnny Gold, Dougie Hayward. Just fascinating, and you know, these are working class guys living and working in one of the best areas of London, if not the best area of London, Mayfair.
Do you know his life story? How he started? How it all happened? My understanding is he was working at a photographic unit at Heathrow, and he caught this picture of a man sleeping on the benches, and it was the immaculately dressed then Home Secretary Reb Butler, and that was what led to him getting the job at the Daily Sketch.
He told me that he was a young man, and he just took this photograph of this guy, and he took it back to the Sketch, and they were blown away by the photo, obviously. And I think afterwards he was asked to take the first photos, he said were unknown at the time, with the Rolling Stones. He said, I never heard of the Rolling Stones. I was told to go to a recording studios where they were and take photos of them, and he followed on by the Beatles, and that was it. It was the sort of catalyst for him to become what he became, you know, just one of the world's greatest photographers. These photos are fascinating. I love them. I love all these photos.
Do you think there's anything about Terry's character that made him such a good photographer? I mean, you knew him.
He had this lovely down-to-earth nature about him. He hadn't changed as a person. There was no airs and graces. There was no snobbery. He would have been Terry O'Neill had he not have been a photographer, had he have been anything, a plumber, maybe a cab driver. It would have still been Terry O'Neill, because he just had that warmth and charm. It didn't matter if he was talking to Steve McQueen or if he was talking to the cleaner. He would talk to him on a similar level, and I think these people would have warmed to him like that. We're coming into Mount Street now, which is the main thoroughfare of Mayfair. Dougie Hayward's shop's just here, and not only was it tailors, it was almost like their little social club. They'd go out the back and have coffee and tea, and if they'd had a lunch in Scotch, they'd go over there afterwards, and they'd just talk, you know, just meet up like a little club. It was a unique group of people that came from the very, very similar backgrounds, but all strived to push that wall down and not just become what they wanted to be. They wanted to be the best at what they could be. Every one of them boys changed people's perception of working class people could be creative. They could be inventive. They could be musicians. And these guys just added to the charm and the character of London, but mostly of Mayfair. We're in South Audley Street at the moment. I'm almost certain he lived in South Street, which runs off of South Audley Street.
Yeah, I've heard that.
But he had a studio in South Audley Street, which, I mean, is perfect for him because his life seemed to be spent in this area for his socialising, his work. People obviously come to his studios.
Crossing over Piccadilly, we're on our way to Tramps. What about Tramps do you know, and Terry?
Well, Tramps and Terry, I think, went hand in hand due to the fact that Johnny Gold was an orphan, Mayfair orphan, and they were good friends. Tramp nightclub has been about since the late '69, still going today. Terry frequented it, and I think it was an exclusive club. It was the club in the 70s and the 80s that anybody was there. This area in itself is as unique as the Orphans. There's no other area in London that you can say is the same as Mayfair. Mayfair is just is a unique little village of the most beautiful houses, the most beautiful restaurants, and if you sat outside Scotch long enough, you'd probably see the most beautiful people of London.
It's really interesting when we talk about the Mayfair Orphans and how they were all successful in their own field. And for someone like Dougie Hayward, it was his craft. For Michael, it was his natural aptitude for acting. But for Terry, what do you think it was that distinguished him?
It's not easy to take a photograph and to capture not only a good photograph, a clear photograph, but of a moment. And he had that in abundance, where he could capture that moment. I personally think that's a gift. He's a very talented man, and a nice man as well.
Oh, Lenny, that was great. Your insights into Terry, the man, so unique. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.